Along the world's longest undefended border, a new kind of conflict is quietly unfolding. This time, it's not soldiers or tanks that cross the line, but tariffs, trade restrictions, and economic threats. The border, once a symbol of friendship and cooperation, has become the front line in a battle of economic wills. The United States, still deeply influenced by America First policies, imposed sweeping tariffs on a range of Canadian goods. The goal? To protect American industry, bring back manufacturing jobs, and send a message that the U.S. would no longer tolerate what it saw as unfair trade practices. Cargo ships slowed, factories braced for change, and workers waited anxiously for the impact. But Canada, often underestimated on the world stage, refused to back down. Instead, Canadian leaders launched a calculated counterattack, carefully selecting U.S. products for their own tariffs. Their response sent shockwaves through global markets, signaling that Canada would defend its interests with precision and resolve. This isn't just about economics or numbers on a spreadsheet, it's a test of alliances, trust, and the realities of a deeply interconnected world. Every decision reverberates far beyond the negotiating table, affecting relationships that have been built over decades. American tariffs targeted Canadian goods in hopes of bringing jobs home. But the global supply chain is a tangled web. One tug and the whole system shakes. Companies on both sides scrambled to adapt, and investors watched nervously as markets fluctuated. Canada's response was strategic and targeted, focusing on U.S. products from key political districts. Suddenly, a trade dispute became a high-stakes chess match, with each move calculated to maximize pressure and political impact. The result? Real, tangible consequences for workers and consumers on both sides of the border. Higher prices at the grocery store, lost jobs in manufacturing towns, and a growing sense of uncertainty about the future. In Ohio, a factory worker faces layoffs as steel prices soar, threatening his family's livelihood and the stability of his community. Meanwhile, a Saskatchewan farmer struggles to sell crops that once easily crossed the border, now blocked by new U.S. duties. Years of hard work and planning are suddenly at risk. The human cost is clear. Decisions made in distant government offices ripple through everyday lives, forcing families to make tough choices and businesses to rethink their futures. This story is about more than policy or politics. It's a stark reminder of how economic warfare can backfire, often hurting the very people it claims to protect. Protests erupt, and economic downturns become more than just lines on a graph. They become personal stories of struggle. As we dig deeper, we'll see how a single policy decision can reshape the future of two nations, altering the course of history and the lives of millions. The stakes have never been higher for North America's most important relationship. What happens next will define not just economies, but the very fabric of life on both sides of the border. For over a century, the U.S. and Canada have built a model partnership, one defined by open borders and shared prosperity. From the Auto Pact to NAFTA, their economies became deeply intertwined, with supply chains stretching across borders. A car might be designed in Michigan, built in Ontario, and sold in Mexico. True continental integration. This system lowered costs and boosted competitiveness, making the U.S.-Canada trade relationship the world's largest. But recent protectionist moves mark a sharp break from this tradition. Tariffs justified on national security grounds have shocked both nations, challenging decades of trust. While disputes over lumber or dairy were once routine, today's broad tariffs threaten the entire economic structure. The old rules no longer apply, and both countries must navigate a new, uncertain landscape. The question now, can this partnership survive the pressures of a changing world? The Trump era brought a seismic shift. Trade became a zero-sum game, and tariffs the weapon of choice. Agreements like NAFTA were attacked, and allies like Canada found themselves in the crosshairs. In 2018, the U.S. imposed steep tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, citing national security, a claim Canada found both baseless and insulting. This move shattered the old playbook, replacing negotiation with unilateral action. Canada, the top supplier of these metals, faced job losses and economic shock. But the tariffs also hurt American manufacturers, raising costs for everything from cars to construction. The reality, U.S. and Canadian industries are deeply linked. We make things together. The aggressive approach forced Canada to abandon its quiet partner role and prepare for a fight. The stage was set for a new era of conflict, with both sides bracing for impact. Canada faced a pivotal choice: either accept the blow dealt by its powerful neighbor, or stand up and strike back in defense of its own interests. The stakes were high. and the world was watching to see how Canada would respond to this unprecedented challenge. It chose the latter, responding not with reckless anger, but with calculated precision and resolve. On Canada Day 2018, a day symbolic of national pride, Ottawa announced dollar-for-dollar tariffs on $12.6 billion worth of U.S. goods, a bold and historic move that sent a clear message across the border. The targets weren't chosen at random. Everyday items like ketchup and bourbon were selected with care, along with lawnmowers, products that originated from key Republican districts where political influence was strongest. The goal was clear: to create real political pain in Washington, D.C., and force American lawmakers to feel the pressure at home. By hitting these strategic products, Canada turned American businesses into unexpected lobbyists against the tariffs. The strategy worked. Major companies like Harley-Davidson, along with powerful industry groups, spoke out and protested, increasing pressure on the Trump administration to reconsider its approach. Canada's approach transformed what began as a bilateral trade dispute into a domestic political problem for the United States, shifting the battleground from international negotiations to the heart of American politics. Fast forward to 2025, and with new tariff threats looming on the horizon, Canada signaled to the world that it was ready to respond again, this time armed with the hard-earned lessons of the past and a proven playbook for action. Canada is no longer a passive player on the world stage. It has demonstrated that it can stand its ground with confidence and strategic skill. Through smart negotiation and effective countermeasures, Canada has shown it can fight back, calmly, smartly, and with real impact. This marks a new era in Canada-US relations, one where even a middle power like Canada can stand up to a superpower and shape the outcome. The message is unmistakable. Canada will always defend its interests, no matter the odds, and it has proven it knows exactly how to play the game, strategically, patiently, and with unwavering resolve. Tariffs don't just hit targeted industries, they ripple through entire economies, sending shockwaves that affect businesses, workers, and consumers far beyond the original scope. When a government imposes tariffs, the effects are rarely contained. Instead, they spread outward, touching every link in the economic chain. U.S. steel tariffs briefly boosted mills, leading to a surge in domestic steel production and some job growth. But these gains came at a price: higher costs for automakers, builders, and appliance makers who rely on steel as a key input. As their expenses rose, so did the prices of cars, homes, and everyday appliances, impacting millions of Americans. Studies showed the tariffs cost U.S. consumers and businesses far more than the jobs they created. For every job saved in steel, several more were threatened elsewhere. Small businesses, in particular, struggled to absorb the higher costs, sometimes passing them on to customers or cutting back on hiring. In Canada, retaliatory tariffs made U.S. goods pricier, sometimes boosting local producers, but often just raising costs for families and businesses. Canadian shoppers saw price tags climb, and some industries faced shortages or delays as supply chains were disrupted. Trade between the two countries dipped, with targeted exports falling sharply on both sides. The once steady flow of goods slowed, and companies that depended on cross-border trade faced new hurdles, uncertainty, and lost revenue. U.S. whiskey exports to Canada plummeted, hurting distillers in Kentucky and Tennessee. These iconic American industries, which had built strong ties with Canadian customers, suddenly found themselves cut off from a vital market, leading to layoffs and financial strain. The pain was strategic. Canada's retaliation hit politically sensitive areas, creating pressure in Washington. Lawmakers faced angry constituents, and the political debate over tariffs intensified, with both sides searching for solutions. The uncertainty stifled investment and innovation, making North America less attractive for business. Companies hesitated to expand or hire, worried that new tariffs or trade barriers could appear at any time. The dream of seamless trade was replaced by border frictions and risk. What was once a smooth process became bogged down by paperwork, inspections, and delays, costing time and money. The numbers tell a clear story. Both sides lost, and the disruption was shared. Billions in trade evaporated, and the economic wounds were felt in communities large and small. Tariffs proved to be a costly weapon, with no real winners. In the end, the economic ripple effect left scars that would take years to heal, reminding us that in a global economy, actions rarely have isolated consequences. Behind the headlines, real people bear the brunt of the trade war. In Hamilton, Ontario, steelworkers faced layoffs and a community's future hung in the balance. Across the border, Wisconsin dairy farmers lost access to Canadian markets, compounding already tough times. Small businesses like a Minnesota boatmaker relying on Quebec aluminum saw costs soar and profits shrink. These stories reveal how tariffs disrupt lives, not just economies. For many, the border was a bridge, not a barrier, until politics turned partners into competitors. The erosion of trust and goodwill may outlast the tariffs themselves. The true cost of this conflict is measured in lost livelihoods and broken connections. Economists and trade experts cut through the political noise with hard truths. Dr. Emily Blanchard calls tariffs what they are: taxes on domestic consumers and businesses. Studies show U.S. importers, not Canadian exporters, pay the price, contradicting political claims. Perrin Beatty of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce warns that tariffs throw sand in the gears of North America's prosperity. Experts agree, retaliation was necessary, but the real solution is a return to open trade. Geopolitical analysts argue that targeting allies with tariffs weakens U.S. global leadership and trust. Legal scholars question the use of national security as a pretext, warning it could undermine global trade rules. The consensus: tariffs are a lose-lose, with far-reaching consequences for both countries and the world. The trade war is a political chess match for leaders on both sides. In the U.S., tough-on-trade rhetoric plays well with voters, making it risky for politicians to back down. In Canada, Trudeau's targeted retaliation won broad support, uniting the country against perceived American bullying. But both leaders face pressure from businesses suffering under the conflict. U.S. lawmakers in tariff-hit states are caught between party loyalty and angry constituents. Canada's strategy turned a foreign dispute into a domestic headache for Washington. As of late 2025, neither side wants to blink first. Political capital is on the line. The future of the relationship may hinge more on politics than economics. The U.S.-Canada trade conflict has forced a rethink of one of the world's strongest alliances. De-escalation will require political courage and a renewed commitment to partnership. Simply returning to the old status quo isn't enough. The world has changed. Modernizing trade agreements and deepening collaboration in key sectors is essential for resilience. Canada's assertive response has redefined its role, showing it can defend its interests with strength. The U.S. has learned that even close allies have limits, and that unilateral actions have consequences. The choices made now will shape whether this partnership emerges stronger or continues to fray in a divided world.